My name's Stephen Reid. I'm just going to fill you in a bit about the history of my life living at Brentwood House at Midland Road for almost 30 years. I was married for a similar period of time and my life was fine. We lived what we thought was modest, enjoying 4 holidays a year. The family were always looked after with nice cars, as did myself and my ex-wife. My business consisted of 9 offices, and we specialised in marketing for personal injury referrals, which we subsequently sold under contract to a panel of solicitors. My young son Wayne was involved in the business. He'd just turned 18. Andrew was some 25 years and he was involved in part of developing the adverts. Wayne was mainly in charge of the cars and he was able to progress the reps on the road via sat-nav system, so he was able to maintain the hospitals and make sure that they were adequately serviced. My business started in personal injury referrals around 1998, having had a successful business just selling the advertising on to individual solicitors, but unfortunately they were tampered with by other solicitors clambering after leads in the personal injury market. They were a very rare and substantial commodity at the time. We built up a quite healthy panel of solicitors of around 30 based in individual locations where we knew we had a high profile in a particular hospital. For instance, in Blackpool Victoria Hospital at the time, John Budd, a long-term solicitors from Church Street, would advertise, and occasionally I think Barker Booth and Eastwood did it likewise. This was very successful until one of the agents went over to Sheffield and signed up Irwin Mitchell, who were a national firm. Previously, we'd only dealt with not just one-man band, but the high street, the type that I've just described, the John Budd, the Barker Booth and Eastwood, etc. Irwin Mitchell are a national firm, but the head office was in Sheffield, and my agent went over and signed them up to gain all the referrals from Sheffield General Hospital. So it was like 1 for 1. Unbeknown to me, I'd heard of Irwin Mitchell, but I didn't realise the size and how big they were in the personal injury market. A gentleman called David Erpeth signed the contract with us for, I think it was 10 cases per month, which was easily achievable. Unfortunately, when we got to 40, they said that only 38 or so had been accepted. Therefore, they were placing us in breach of the agreement. This wasn't fair because the agreement always referred to leads, not accepted, otherwise every solicitor could place us in breach from the beginning of the contract. We also had a cleaning up at the end of it of 3 months where we wouldn't charge them any money should there be any shortfall on the referral caseload. This very rarely happened and our solicitors were extremely happy. We then entered into agreement with Irwin Mitchell on our standard proposal form, a contract that was for 2 years. This was to supply an agreed number of leads every single month. Not accepted referrals, as Irwin Mitchell altered the reverse of the terms and conditions to suit their own means. This obviously caused a problem because you can't operate like that, because what happens if the person in the RTA isn't fit enough to send the CFA form back, which is a conditional fee agreement, meaning that the solicitors are going to get paid. The whole scheme of it would not work, because all I had to say was, well, he didn't accept it. We weren't to know. There was 2 events that were going to change everything. One was accepting an agreement with Irwin Mitchell, a national firm who weren't going to bat with a straight bat and were going to do whatever they could to us. And the second, unfortunately, was an armed robbery at the premises on the 4th of August at 10 minutes past 8, when our family were attacked and assaulted by a gang believed to be from Manchester and Derby. This caused a terrific turmoil, not only on myself, but also on my son, who was ran over, suffered head injuries when they were making their escape with not only the safe from the business, which thankfully was too heavy for 3 of them to manhandle, but also destroying and taking computer equipment. When I say it was destroyed, instead of just unplugging it, they cut through every single mains lead and caused damage to motherboards, etc, etc. Anyway, that was all as a part of being robbed, I suppose. Unfortunately, when I went back to the house after giving the evidence of the CCTV footage to the investigating officer Simon Pritchard, who's still with Lancashire Constabulary, my wife of 30 odd years at the time said, "Something's happened to you, what's wrong?" I didn't know, I wasn't able to explain myself, but safe to say that I distanced myself from my two sons, my grandchildren, and also my wife. I'm trying to describe just how the effect was on my family after this robbery. It is very difficult to put into words. I am still suffering to this day. As I was in recovery, Irwin Mitchell were putting me under pressure to return the £40,000 with no deduction whatsoever for every case they had received. And lo and behold, when the final bill came, it was £160,000. They wanted £120,000 costs from a firm of solicitors who were doing all the work in-house. Even with that in mind, my solicitor said, "Steve, your health's more important, pay it." He sent them an offer of payment, it was ignored. They never went to the court to make me bankrupt with that evidence. They never went with any of the reports from the mental health service. They had notification from my doctor from the robbery. I was on suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and they had a 13-week sick note. Then they had another. They all ran consecutively, taking into consideration the 21st of December, that date when they went armed with nothing to Blackpool County Court. In fact, I wasn't present, they weren't present. They put the onus onto their agents, Rixon's, who are now DWA law. Notwithstanding the £160,000 and the outrageous £120,000 costs, they didn't accept the settlement from Adam Mackay, a reputable solicitor from Liverpool, and steamrolled me into bankruptcy because they could see it was £1 million house, and also that their process server had intimate knowledge of my business's finances, because I presumed, quite wrongly, that he was a friend. I did not know that he was going to commit perjury and said that he'd served me papers. He never did. The man is a blatant liar. And I've got photographs of him, Eric and Anne, his mum and dad, attending my house at my function. And they then swore statements. They say they didn't even know me. What kind of people are these? The situation for me was I wasn't really compos mentis. I didn't know what was going on. I was on heavy medication and didn't attend the court for the simple reason I wasn't served. I was never at the gates that Darren Shelmadine claimed to attend. So what happened was, Irwin Mitchell were then able to deceive Blackpool County Court by saying that I was avoiding service. What part of being bedridden and medicated, having suffered an armed robbery, quantifies you to accuse me of avoiding service? It just doesn't exist. It is falsification. You lied, you committed perjury, you deceived the court. The Irwin Mitchell have now got the bankruptcy order by default and misleading the court. After this, Stephen Williams was appointed on the 14th of February 2007 as my trustee. The word should be in trustee. What happened then was they applied for a freezing order via Irwin Mitchell, who were the petitioners, so immediately there was a conflict. Irwin Mitchell lied to the Leeds High Court saying that my family were leaving the country and they wanted a freezing order, not just on me, but on my ex-wife, on my late son and on my youngest son. This was oppressive, this was wrong, because they got another order by cheating the courts. Irwin Mitchell really aren't fit to be solicitors. They're not solicitors. They're liars, they're vagabonds, they're charlatans. Bearing in mind that the original judgment debt that I owed them, and I admit that, was £40,000. They then added on £120,000, making £160,000, which we still agreed to pay. But what happened was, they went a stage further. They obtained the freezing order that prevented me feeding my family, the German shepherds that we kept and the horses that we kept. I was destitute from that moment on. No credit cards would work and we couldn't draw any money out the house. So from a £40,000 debt, Irwin Mitchell and BEGBIES TRAYNOR, between them, took just under £1 million and made me homeless. It was the majority in costs. I think BEGBIES TRAYNOR claimed £500,000 in costs for sending a few letters and attending a few court cases, and Irwin Mitchell charged about £700,000. The rest is taken up in disbursements. If I could just explain what a freezing order is, it's basically the same as having your legs chopped off. You can't withdraw from the bank, you can't have a bank account, and you can't use your credit cards or debit cards. Everything is stopped. This to me was absolutely devastating. It was to my family. Even though I was bedridden, I still needed to ensure that the family were looked after and the animals were feeded. I was unable to do so. This had a terrible detrimental effect on me. We'd gone from a loving, close family to a family that had been invaded from strangers that we don't know, threatening us with arms, running my son over and taking everything from us via fraud. The bankruptcy was obtained by fraud. The robbery was just a determined criminal event which I was compensated for by the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority, but unfortunately Begbie's Traynor, being what they are, they took the vast majority of that when it was protected under law, under precedent, that a CICA award is for the recovery of that victim, and in my case it was a mental health problem not expected to last over 5 years. It's lasted 14 years. I am still bankrupt now to this day. Tell me anybody else who's been made bankrupt criminally by the actual petitioners, who is now held in that order that was obtained by fraud on the court, not only in Blackpool but then to Leeds, and now it's extended into Manchester. You can't even man up and go to that court and say, we've made a mistake with Mr. Reed, we hid the evidence, the court was disturbed, justice was dislocated. I am a victim of your perversion of justice, and if you think 1 minute you can hide behind the brand of Irwin Mitchell or Begbie's Traynor Group PLC, gentlemen, you're very much mistaken. Because of my predicament being left bereft with no money, I invented the character Afro Man Scarecrow, and then it developed into productions. The idea behind that was not only to support my beloved football club and all the fans who felt that they were victims of the Oyston regime, which we all were. It created a bigger friendship. People were starting to follow me. So I made what was a video outside Begbie's Traynor offices in Preston. I named and shamed each solicitor, each trustee, and it has now attracted over 150,000 followers or viewers and 1.8 subscribers. My idea behind that was not to shame them, but was to get a solicitor who perhaps would say, well, this man's been wronged. He's not only been wronged himself, the whole profession has been wronged. Barristers should be ashamed, solicitors should be ashamed, paralegals should be ashamed, the partners should be ashamed. This is morally and criminally wrong, and it can't exist in a modern society where fairness and justice reigns above all. So come on, Irwin Mitchell, sort this out. Come on, Begbie's Traynor. Don't allow yourself to go into liquidation. Don't allow yourself to be hated forevermore, because I ain't going to stop. I'm telling my story in a truthful, honest manner, and I apologise if I get emotional, but I've had 14 years of people like you chipping at my head, stealing from me, leaving me with no money, unable to buy my own home, being rented accommodation after being in what could be described as a mansion, and looking after my loving family in the best way possible by working honestly and hard each day, and you've destroyed all that. The people that did this planned attack was sentenced to lengthy prison sentences at Preston Crown Court, having pleaded guilty. Not only did this cause my mental breakdown, but I also had 3 strokes. I've lost the sight of my right eye, and also my son, who was knocked down. There was no regard for human life by these bastards. They've destroyed my life, and Irwin Mitchell and Begbie's Traynor have jumped on board, raped my family, taken my home, made me homeless, and left me with absolutely nothing. Are you proud as solicitors? Are you glad you cheated the establishment? Are you glad you used perjury? Did you want to come into my home and blackmail and bribe me, say I was going to be attacked again in the night? Why did you do this? Why didn't you prevent it? It's your duty. You can't go into court and lie. You are dishonest. You're heinous individuals. You're nefarious individuals. You should not be in the profession. You are there to provide a service to the court. The reason why I'm making this video is because I've tried other ways to expose the crooks at Irwin Mitchell and BEGBIES TRAYNOR Group PLC. It is very difficult when you are left with no money, having previously headed a successful business turning over around £5 million per annum with nice profits of probably 1.5 to 1.2 million. There was no reason for me not to pay the 40,000. Likewise, there was no reason for BEGBIES TRAYNOR and Irwin Mitchell to lie before the judiciary. It is all a tragedy. I hope I have got my message across. I may have made mistakes by dressing up as a scarecrow, but when you've got no money and no soundness of mind, what else can you do? Please don't fall into my position, and if there's any solicitors out there that want to help me and redress the position that the profession are in, under disrepute from Irwin Mitchell, one of the biggest firms of ambulance chasers in this country, aided and abetted by the most dishonest trustees at BEGBIES TRAYNOR Group PLC, please give us a call. My mobile number is the same as it has been since 1990. It's 07774 60 8519. Give me a call if you think you can assist in the most serious travesty of justice, probably in the history of insolvency. Thank you for listening to me and listening to my plight.